The next power carver we're going to talk about is the high-speed NSK Presto. It runs in the 360,000 RPM range. It's air-driven. It's connected to my air compressor here. It's got a built-in regulator to set at 35 psi, which is what the handset runs at. The handpiece is very lightweight. The bits are easy to change. The burrs are easy to change. You just rotate the handset. They pop right out. To put a new burr in, it comes with this little accessory that you basically just pop it in there, turn it on, and you're ready to go. The burrs run about $2.50 each. The Presto itself, the whole complete unit, runs about $500, and it's good for doing very fine piercing work. This is an example of what I'm talking about. This little bowl here is turned to between about 2 millimeters thick. And the cutouts and the piercings are all done with the Presto unit. It's very time consuming, but the results are impressive. This is another example of another piece that again is turned very thin, and the piercing is done with that handset. But also on this, I don't know if you can see it here, but I also used it for stippling, where you just create a pattern here that doesn't pierce the wood, but it just makes a stippling pattern. The next power carver is called a Micromotor. The motor for is actually right in the handset, and the advantage of that is it makes it very easy to manipulate and carve. The connection to the power supply is just a very lightweight extension cord here, and seldom gets in the way of what you're carving. The collets, the burrs that this take are a size up from the Presto. The Presto is 1/16 inch collets, while this is 3/32 and 1/8 inch collets. 1/8 inch is pretty much a standard, what you'll see in a lot of these from the Dremel on up. It's got a speed control that you can do from here, or you can use a foot control, which a lot of people like, and control it by foot. It goes in both directions, and it runs in the 30 to 40,000 RPM range. It's got a lot of power. It's good for engraving, for an inlay. Here are a couple of examples of inlay carving. The design was carved out with a drill bit type burr, and the inlay was filled in with crushed stone. Another example is here. See if I can get rid of the reflection there. But again, it starts out with a drill bit type burr to carve out the pattern, and then it's filled with crushed stone and CA glue, and then sanded. The rim is also filled with crushed stone, and a lot of that work again was done with this Micromotor. Changing bits is again very simple. You just rotate one way, it releases the collet. You pull the bit out, push the burr back in, turn it the other way, and it's locked in there. For the different size burrs, you just add a different type collet to grip the burr. There are just a ton of different burrs that you can buy for these machines. this little handy holder for putting the different size burrs in here. And I'll show you examples of different burrs in a second here. But so most of the burrs go for between $2.50 up to $10 to $15, depending on the size and the design of the burr. The different sizes can be adapted to each of these devices through a collet, and as you see, there's just a lot of different options. There's things for sanding flat. This is a 3/4 inch round piece of sandpaper that you can cut and then glue on to a rubber accessory here. There's the standard sanding drums, come in 1/2 inch, 3/8, and 1/4 inch drums. There's different sanders. This is a flap sander. It's a 100 grit flap sander for very aggressive sanding. There's these fiber type brushes that are good for getting rid of fuzzies after you do carving, and just cleans up carvings. There's different grits by the color. This is the drill bit that I talked about for doing inlay carving, and even though it's a drill bit, it's really not for drilling. It's real easy to control. It doesn't jump on you like some of the more aggressive bits. There's different brushes. This is a brass brush, and there's steel brushes, real soft nylon brushes, and then you've got your more specialized burrs. This is a fairly aggressive one for doing straight lines. There's round ones, cylinder ones that are good for carving out a lot of wood at a time. There's pointed ones for getting into to corners. There's just cotton pads for fine brushing, maybe for plastics. Different size cylinder ones. This has a round tip, whereas the other one, where's a clean spot, the other one had a flat tip. There's different balls, size balls that you can get. So your options for burrs are very extensive. They range from about $2.50 for simple ones to under $10 for most of the 3/32 inch and burrs like this, and to some, probably the most expensive ones range in the $12 to $15 range. And again, a lot of options. All these can come in different grits. Another one I use a lot is also a micromotor, but it's portable. It has a battery in the base unit here, and then connects to a very lightweight handpiece. Accepts all the same burrs as the last micromotor one, but it runs a little bit slower at 30,000 RPM instead of 40 to 50,000 RPM. Again, the bits are easy to change. You rotate one way, slips out, locks in, rotate the other way. This is a portable unit. It also bidirectional, goes in both directions, and variable speed, very easy and lightweight. The whole unit can move around, attach to your belt, go in your pocket, or I've got a little attachment here where I can with magnets that I can connect it to my lathe, and I can do my carving right next to the headset. The portable version, this runs about $250. The other micromotor is also in the $250 to $300 range. Here are some of the pieces I've carved with the hand pieces that we just looked at. This right here, the yellow curved lines were drawn off an indexing feature of a lathe, and then with the edge of a bottle drew the curve, and then with this device, with this bit right here, just made the carved out the along the lines there, and then the yellow is actually a wax that you fill in, and since the piece was already had a finish on it, you could let the wax dry in the groove and then just wipe off, scrape off the rest of it to give you a nice clean look. A piece like this, the panels are carved out with a huge Foredom bit, and that took off most of the wood, and then with the fine pointed ones I could get into the corners and make square corners. The black diagram drawings in here were burned in with pyrography with a branding bit for the hand pieces. But most of this was hand carved or power carved with different bits, and then painted gold. This is another piece where the panels were carved out pretty deep and then painted with different types of paints, and then a little drawing of something that was painted on. And again, it's hollowed out, but the designs here were all carved in. And then there's a piece like this that again was turned. The black was carved out and then stippled with a power carver with a sort of a random stippling design, and then these were cut out with the cutter, again on a micromotor tool, and then painted. Next set of tools we're going to look at are the Dremel line. There are 10, 15 different versions of a Dremel tool. Dremel's also almost become like Kleenex is as a generic term for these rotary tools. There's the plug-in ones like this. They are very powerful. Obviously the battery's not going to run out. They got a lot of power and a variable speed capability through the switch here. There's the battery operated ones. The early ones weren't very impressive. The battery didn't last long, but these have plenty of power. This is a 10.8 volt lithium battery one, and the battery lasts a long time. This is actually my favorite tool. There's smaller versions, battery ones. This is a 7 volt one. Just has 2 speeds, high and low. And but they all take the same accessories, the 1/8 inch burrs. This is a specialty Dremel tool. It's mostly for engraving. It's got a fixed point here. You can't really change it, but it's a plug-in version, and as I say, it's built for engraving. You can hold it almost like a pencil, and do your work. One of the advantages of a Dremel is that it's got a ton of accessories. This one here is a right angle. It goes right on the tip there and basically gives you a right angle holder for your burrs. It's also got a accessory that adds length, and it's a flex shaft. It goes into the end of the Dremel tool right there. You take that off, cap off, that goes in, and you've got basically an extension that will accept any of the common Dremel bits and burrs. The other nice accessory is a holder for doing very fine work. Your tool goes in here, latches in, and then you've got the ability to finally hold it for engraving a pattern. If you got a straight pattern, this is an edge guide here, or you can just trace a pattern that you've drawn on your wood, and basically make it a easy to control carving engraving tool. Dremel also makes a Foredom-like flex shaft product. So 1/5 horsepower, runs about $200, and they run around 2,300 RPM. The handset ones, these run between 25 and 35,000 RPM. They come standard holding 1/8 inch with a 1/8 inch collet, but there's other collets you can use to go down in size to the 3/32 inch accessories. So I think if you only had one to pick, I would go for this one right here. It's the 10.8 volt lithium ion battery. The battery slips on, it charges very quickly, and it's got a lot of power, and the battery runs for a really long time. So to me, this is probably the best value Dremel tool that that I would get as my first Dremel, unless you had a specialty need like for an engraver or something like that. But this is has been pretty good for me. Next, we have a rather unique flex shaft product called the Genevieve. It's really was designed for finish sanding and sanding in tight areas, bottom of bowls and so on. What makes it unique is it's got these rubber bladders that you put your sanding sleeve on, like this, and once on, you use this little hand pump to pump up the bladder and to either soft or firm, whatever you want. But the bladder will let you, if you keep it soft, will go around corners quite easily, and it'll sort of adapt to the item that you're sanding. Or you can pump it up quite hard, and the slow speed gives you some flexibility in making sure that you don't take off too much material. It's not variable speed, it's just single speed. And you can see here, running about 3,600 RPM, as I say. It's got two main type of accessories: the round with no bottom, or it's got the rounded ones that again are good for getting in the bottom of hollow forms or other type of items you're working with. There's a lot of different grit sleeves from this is 220, 150, 320, and it goes down to 80 grit sleeves. So it's quite handy. As I say, I use it mostly for finish sanding on inside of hollow forms, and this you can put a buffing wheel on this side if you want to use it for buffing, and the slow speed again for this application is an advantage of this type of device. And I think they run around $350. The next category we're going to talk about are really power carvers. These are accessories that go on an angle grinder. This is a battery operated one from Rigid. Their angle grinders are fairly inexpensive, from $35–40 for the plug-in ones to the battery operated ones, which are not much more. But if you buy into a brand of battery operated tools, the standalone tool itself is around $60 or $70. So the tool part of these are not very expensive. A lot of people will get an angle grinder to cut metal. This is a 40 grit metal 16th inch disc, and use that. You can go right through metal pipes, copper pipes, whatever, pretty quickly. For us, what we're going to talk about is carving, and this category of accessories are for hogging out and doing not fine sanding, but smoothing out rough sanded work. This is a fairly low grit one, and then they go into medium and fine grit. You can see these are gummed up quite a bit. And the way you clean them is actually with a blowtorch. You can take your blowtorch in there and clean these out pretty well if that's what you want to do. If you're working on a log that has a lot of pitch, it will gum up pretty quickly. The next category are mini chainsaws. So these two are examples of attachments that will go on and turn your angle grinder into a mini chainsaw. And there's a lot of uses for that, but they are very aggressive, and you want to make sure you have all your safety gear on, from eye protection, hand protection, and whatever. When using an angle grinder, you always want to use two hands, especially when you're going into the wood. It can really jump on you, so be very, very careful in using this type of tool. The last attachment I wanted to bring up is a rather unique accessory from Arbortech, and we'll be talking about Arbortech tools in the next section. But this is actually a planer. In this case, there's 3 blades along here, and you can flatten out a log or a board, just like a handheld planer. But they work, again, these are very aggressive, and when you touch them to the wood, they will jump on you, so you need to hang on to it pretty tightly. But once you get going, they work great at smoothing out raw wood. So continuing with accessories for an angle grinder, we have a set of really cool attachments, again from Arbortech. They're designed so that they will screw right on to the shaft of the angle grinder. And I have four different kinds here. The first one is for sanding. It's good for contours. You can see this has a rubber backing, and then there's different grit 2-inch sanding discs that will stick right on there. You can also get an adapter so that you can use instead of PSA type sanding discs, just Velcro ones that stick right on and easy to change. Like we saw with the planer attachment, this is a 2-inch one that goes on the angle grinder again for getting into smaller spots, and this has two cutters, and again it just screws right on to the angle grinder. Another recent option that they just came out with is this ball gouge, and you can see it's a little bit of at an angle, so it's good for basically carving out round holes in your wood. And then this is called a turbo shaft, which is I think that's about 3/4 inch, and again that's for making holes going straight in, like for I don't know, maybe eyeballs in something that you're carving. So you can either use this, which would be more of a flat bottom, whereas this the ball gouge would give you a totally round hole, both around the sides and a round bottom. Arbortech also makes a power carver, which, if you don't want to use a big angle grinder, this is their power carver. And right now the accessory I have on here is for putting round discs in here. You have a sanding disc that you screw in there. We have these 2-blade cutters for cutting, a lower cost just steel accessories for cutting, and this whole part here comes off, and you can use by taking that off, you can use this with the tools that we just looked at for the angle grinder. So for example, this one here, you could use it as I said, go straight in, make a hole, or more likely you can use it like a router, and in this case it'll be a 3/4 inch groove that you're making, and just use the tool, and there should be a handle here. Again, you can put this in here on here, and use it for planing out, smoothing out your wood. So the power carver is about $250. There's a chisel option, which I don't have, that replaces this and makes it a power chisel. And as you saw on the Foredom handset for power carving, it comes with a set of, I don't know, maybe half a dozen different shaped chisels, and by putting a little pressure on there, you can just remove a lot of wood very quickly. One thing I don't care for this, number one, it's not variable speed, but neither is your angle grinder. It does run at 12,000 RPM, where your angle grinder is about 6,000 or so RPM. But in the case of the sanding disc here, you can see all these are pretty clean because I've never used them. You have to use a little screw nut to attach them and to go from grit to grit. It takes a lot of time. So that's why I like the option with a device like this, where you can easily go from grit to grit with a PSA disc, or you can get the accessory to make it with the Velcro type backing.